Hello and welcome to the Trending Now podcast for this Friday, March 14th, 2025. I'm Louie Butko. Thank you for joining us as we recap the week that was on Trending Now, which you can catch every Monday to Friday, 7 p.m. and 11:30 right here on CHCH.com. It has been a very busy week, so there's a lot to get into. And let's waste no time by diving into it with the host of Trending Now and producer. She is Manesa Dhanabalan.
Hi, how's it going?
Great to see you. I just kind of asked off the cuff earlier, do you miss Joe Biden? Not in the sense of what he did, but you just miss how we never really heard from Joe Biden.
Yeah.
It was very boring when Joe Biden was president.
A lot, almost whiplash.
Yeah.
Especially and I'm sure you're going to talk to Tessa about this too, but things things happen and then it doesn't happen and then it happens and then it's a pause and then it's a tariff and then it's a pause and that's you know what I mean? It's just so much of that.
And I've told this the great comparison is John Mulaney. It's there's a horse loose in a hospital where you have to be aware of where the horse is, him being Trump. And you need to be constantly checking. And the thing about Trump is he could send something out on Truth Social at 1:30 in the morning that can completely change the trajectory of global affairs and world economics and really.
And he just drops it like nothing.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking at 1:30 in the morning and I'm just going to.
Or somebody told him something and it's new information. And then, I've tried to watch Trump and that's what we do a lot here on Trending Now. We kind of have to watch Trump to figure out what he said and what's newsworthy. And it's just his train of thought and the way that the media attacked Joe Biden in that, he loses his train of thought. Of course, Trump gets to save this by saying he's the great weaver. Right? He weaves these stories and that they might seem like they go nowhere. But there was one question he was asked about Canada, and we're going to get to all that stuff, Trump and Canada and tariffs and whatever later on. But he was asked about Canada, and then he goes on this 15-second, 20, 30-second screed about Wayne Gretzky. Oh, I know Wayne Gretzky. Wayne Gretzky's the great one. Now they're being too mean to him up there in Canada. I don't know, but he's a great guy. Oh yeah, about the tariffs. It's how do you, as a reporter and a producer of the show,
okay, this is funny because I had to deal with that a lot. Because this week I was covering Russia and Ukraine a lot.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that.
And then even when I had to yesterday, I had to find a clip about him saying something about Greenland or something. So in his press conference, you have to listen to every single thing that he says and find it somewhere. And it's because he talks about everything, but then he just jumps back and forth, so you can't even go by.
Yeah,
it's hard.
It's
just,
because this job, we've said it a bunch of times. The Trending Now job, it's a lot, right? You're putting together a half-hour show on really everything that's going on in the world, whether it's super local, like the Ontario election, whether it's international, like Russia, Ukraine, and that's most of our topic today is international stuff. But that's why I started with this with, don't you miss Biden? Where you could go weeks without hearing from Joe Biden or seeing Joe Biden.
Yeah, that's
Trump
the thing.
is just everywhere. I don't even think we'll have time to talk about the Trump Tesla commercial.
Because all of the trends tie back to Trump. And right now at the moment it's tariffs, but 2 weeks ago it was him cutting back all those jobs, the federal workers and stuff.
Oh, we're gonna get to Doge. Don't worry.
All that kind of, and then Musk this week. There was one day that it actually wasn't Trump, and it was because Elon Musk was trending with all the Tesla stuff. So that's the only time, and it almost feels okay, when Trump is not trending, he's still trending because it's Elon Musk.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The Trump literally had a Tesla commercial on the front lawn of the White House this week, where he brought in 4 different Teslas. He had the talking points for the Teslas, the prices for you could see the Associated Press had a great picture of what Trump's notes were. And it was this big speech about how you need to support Tesla and they're a great American company, and because their stock is crashing. And by the way, the stock market's crashing. Since Trump has taken office, the stock market, TSX, Dow Jones, or whatever, New York Stock Exchange, has lost $5 trillion in market value. $5 trillion. And this is a guy who was, he was so good at business. He was so good at economics.
And remember those clips that are flooding social media when he said back then that he's anybody who makes the stock market crash in 2 days or something like that. I don't remember what it was word for word, but
I just love that everything about everything he says, he's all, everything that's happening to him, he's already criticized Biden for.
Yeah.
And that the stock market's Biden's fault. Well, it's been 2 months now. So
And then it's
2 months since you've been sworn in, like 6 months since you've been actually elected. So like we've known you've been president for 6 months, I guess. December.
Do you know what the biggest challenge about covering Trump is?
Tell me.
It's not even like him jumping back and forth or, always doing these things at 1:30 in the morning and having these petty fights on Truth Social with certain people who don't agree with him. The biggest issue is the fact that we have to fact check what he says.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's just it's crazy because a lot of the things that you hear, it's just like, okay, well, that's not necessarily true. That's not necessarily true. Like, how many times?
Well, even the tariff stuff, right? I mean, he says every time that Canada is ripping them off to the tune of $200 billion. There's a trade mismatch for sure. There is, and we export more, we get more money. But it's $37 billion at the most. Not $200 billion, but he just goes out there and he talks about this. All the Canadians are like, Canada wants to be the 51st state. No world is that ever true. Like 85% of Canadians want to remain part of Canada, which seems low, actually, by the way. Because if you are one of those 9% of people who do want to be part of the U.S., then just go move there, I guess. Like, you want to be there, go move there.
Yeah.
But it's the fact checking, I guess. Yeah. And then you get attacked for fact checking as reporters. Like reporters get attacked.
I mean, yeah. Remember in the White House press conference with Caroline, she said something about how. Like with taxes and tariffs, she almost made it seem like it's different. And
have you paid tariffs before? Because I have, right? Like,
yeah.
And it's combative and it's exhausting as journalists.
That was the Associated Press member who said that, and then she's like, "Oh, it's insulting that you're questioning me," and it's like, you can't answer a question, like, and it doesn't add up what they're saying.
Don't you miss Biden?
I miss Biden.
Don't you miss Biden? We've 15 minutes later, we're just back to don't you miss Biden? Russia, Ukraine. Speaking of Trump.
Yes.
Russia, Ukraine. What's the latest? What's going on here?
Well, this week, Ukraine, they all met in Saudi Arabia. Well, not they all, not Russia.
Yeah.
It was U.S. and Ukraine, and officials sat down. They talked about the U.S. proposal for a 30-day ceasefire. Mm-hmm. And Ukraine's on board with it if Russia agrees. So here's the thing. Putin did answer yesterday. He did talk about it, but he showed optimism and a positive response for it. But he said there's a lot of things that still need to be sorted out. And then they needed to still have a conversation with the U.S. And I believe they already had that conversation with the U.S. But here's the thing. People in Ukraine, people in Russia, they're all very skeptical about what this, like where this is really going to go and is it really going to happen? And what happens with Kursk, where Russia has taken back that territory at this point, like what happens with that? Like there are a lot of questions about, I mean, I think I saw even Putin saying that he said if this, I'm forgetting the word. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the word.
The ceasefire?
No, it's the people who are in Kursk who are fighting for Ukraine. What?
Separatists.
No. the
It'll come to you.
Okay, whoever's in Ukraine, if they surrender, like.
Okay, yeah.
So that's also something that he actually put out there. So, like, there's a lot of fears that they're going to use this ceasefire as, like, both sides are going to use it to actually just,
keep it going.
What is wrong with me today? Why are words not a thing?
It's been a long week. And this is what it gets down to. And that's why, like, not so, I have kiddingly started with, like, this is exhausting. Like, this is, like, to keep up with everything. Like this, like your brain has only just got so much space for words, right?
Yeah, I'm working on a Russia-Ukraine packet, and then you see that Trump said something about when Greenland starts trending.
Exactly, and that's it. So at 10 a.m., here you go. Here's Trump from Truth Social. We had a very good and productive discussion with Vladimir Putin of Russia yesterday, and there is a very good chance that this horrible, bloody war can finally come to an end. But at this very moment, thousands of Ukrainian troops are completely surrounded by the Russian military and in a very bad and vulnerable position. I have strongly requested to Putin that their lives be spared. This would be a horrible massacre, not one since World War II. God bless them all. Like, I don't even know what that means. Like, he's praising Putin, which he normally does. A very good and productive discussion with Vladimir Putin. Like, nobody talks like that about Putin except for Trump.
Yep.
And then he picks fights with Zelensky in the White House. Right? Like, it's just like one of those things that, like,
I think that's something that no one's ever going to forget.
The fight
like, I
in
mean,
the White
yeah,
House?
like that's like burned in my memory.
Yeah.
Like, I just cannot believe that actually happened.
Yeah.
And the outrage that everybody felt. Because, like, he's being accused of saying these things that he never, like, having a certain tone that he never had. I'm not even going to get into it. But anyways, it's just frustrating.
Yeah, and I get it. Like, it's just like, and who knows what's going to happen, right? This war's been going on for 3+ years now.
Yeah.
Anyway, with that being said, anything fun this weekend that you got going on that gets to distract you from?
I'm going to a party on Saturday.
Ooh, are you going to live it up?
I mean, the last time I went to a party, I lived it up a little bit too much.
Okay.
So
all right.
I think I'm going to try to be a little bit careful.
All right. That's good. That's good. Well, enjoy. And I know tomorrow's supposed to be a beautiful day, so hopefully you get outside too.
Thank you. How about you? Any plans?
No, not really. It's my one friend's birthday next week, but I'm away next week, so we might do something like combine it with like, oh, it's St. Patrick's Day and it's nice and we need an excuse to get outside and get the sunshine. Because
nice.
it's, like I said, I think it's supposed to be like 16 or 17
Oh my
degrees.
gosh. Thank you for telling me that.
I know.
I am totally going out
Enjoy.
tomorrow.
All right, get back to the show.
I think this is the first podcast we were nice to each other.
Oh my gosh!
High five.
We're going to set the record. That's it. Let's try to be nice to each other next time.
Sure.
Okay. Well,
I'm
that was close.
kidding.
That was close to almost not being nice. All right. I want to get to this. Thank you. Manesa Dhanabalan, everybody. Tessa Bennett will be here in just a second. But Marco Rubio, the U.S. Secretary of State, says Canada, as a 51st state, came out of the Trump-Trudeau talks. Now, Rubio says Trump's repeated calls for Canada to become the 51st state began with the chat the president had with the former Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Now, Rubio says Trump's repeated calls for Canada to become the 51st state was because Trudeau told Trump that Canada couldn't survive as a nation state if the U.S. went ahead with threatened tariffs on Canadian imports. Rubio said, quote, at which point the president said, well, then you should become a state. And that's where this all began. Trump loves Canada, Rubio insisted. He simply made a comment for why Canada would be better off joining the states from an economic perspective. And he's made that argument repeatedly, and I think it stands for itself. All right. Joining the show, Tessa Bennett. Don't you miss Biden?
You know,
not in like a political, like you agree with everything that Biden did. Don't you just miss like the boringness of Joe Biden?
a lot less of the Canadian news was about United States
Isn't that
politics
true?
when he was president. So
Yeah.
I do miss that part of it.
And it's just like, it's every day that it's something that we have to talk about with Trump and tariffs and are they on and are they off? And
Well, that's the thing.
I can only imagine like take me through your day Tuesday.
Tuesday was a roller coaster.
So Tuesday, the 25% tariffs on aluminum were set to take effect on the Wednesday.
Well, no, actually, on Tuesday, when the day
Take me through your Tuesday, because I'm curious what the day was like.
From when I got here to when I ended, it was completely different. Because when I got here, Ford had rolled out his surcharge on US-bound electricity that Ontario supplies. And in response, Trump had actually doubled the steel and aluminum tariffs on Canada to 50%. So that's how the day started.
Which were
Tensions
set to go into effect
the following day,
Wednesday.
Yes, Trump's tariffs at least. So tensions were very high at the start of the day. Trump put out a series of, I could say, inflammatory posts on Truth Social, using terms like, Canada will pay a financial price for this so big that it will be read about in history books for years to come. Like, clearly it struck a nerve with him, this surcharge on electricity, which...
I mean, you have to argue that was Doug Ford's plan. Like, Doug Ford has been dying to get Trump's attention.
He really has.
He's been like thirsty for Trump's attention. Like, just
Which is
to put it
a
in
little
trending now
odd,
terms.
but-
Yeah. And that was the other thing about the electricity surcharge. Nothing happened. So what happened was the 25% tariff still took in effect in aluminum and steel on the Wednesday, right?
Yes. So around midday, Ford had been making the rounds on American media outlets, as he has been. Trump had continued his rhetoric as well. At some point, Ford had a phone call with, I believe it was Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. And whatever they talked about on this call, Ford was satisfied enough to reverse his threats because he had set up a meeting. They actually met yesterday in Washington, but they had this phone call and Ford reversed his measures. And in response, Trump reversed his doubling of the tariffs. But the 25% tariffs remain on steel and aluminum and some of the blanket tariffs that were applied to Canada last week.
And we got threatened with even more with dairy tariffs and lumber tariffs later in the day. And
that, I believe, was last week.
Okay.
But, you know, it's hard to keep track, and this is the point.
And that's what I mean. So, like, the seesawing of tariffs. Because, that's what sticks out to me is, like, what did Doug Ford actually get? He got a phone call with Howard Lutnick and then a meeting with Howard Lutnick yesterday.
Yes.
But we still got the 25% aluminum and steel tariffs.
Yes, and
so
the blanket tariffs.
What did Doug Ford get?
So I think, and this is just strictly personal opinion, I've been covering this for like a good solid few months now.
I was just about to say, you're more educated than the average person, so go ahead.
I tend to think there's something else happening behind the scenes that maybe we don't know about because, as you pointed out earlier, Ford was very gung-ho at the beginning of this. He was very keen to get the attention of Trump and to find that nerve and strike the nerve as well with the surcharge on electricity and, you know, sporting the Canada's not for sale hats. Like, I think from the jump, he's been very firm on that. And then in the last few days, really, we've seen kind of a 180 from him. He backed off entirely on the electricity. He met with Lutnick yesterday, along with some other Canadian officials in Washington, and said that was the best meeting he'd ever had in Washington. They're meeting again next week. So I think there must be something else at play that maybe we're not aware of, because it would be odd otherwise for him to have had such a dramatic turnaround in opinion.
Speaking of dramatic turnaround of opinion, the Liberal Party of Canada has really changed their fortunes, especially now that Prime Minister Carney is the leader of the land as of 11 a.m. this morning, sworn into office.
Introducing for the first time.
For the first time. Ladies and gentlemen, for the first time, the Prime Minister of Canada. But yeah, obviously a pretty historic day. It almost seems like it's missing a little pomp and circumstance, right? I mean...
Well, it's an unusual circumstance because
Absolutely.
he is in a position where he's been elected as Prime Minister of Canada without holding an elected seat in Parliament. Like, he is not, as he described himself on the campaign trail, he's not your usual suspect. So I think that's a bit odd. And also, you know, with questions swirling about how soon an election will be called, I think there's a reason it's probably not as dramatic today as it typically would be when swearing in a new prime minister and his cabinet.
Yeah, it just, like I say, it just seems like it's like, like if this was the States, right? And obviously a different way, but like, you know, if somebody were coming in after an illness or somebody resigned or assassination or something like that, like it'd be huge. Like it'd be like, and here it's like, oh yeah, like by the way, new prime minister today.
Yeah, it's not.
Especially after almost 10 years of Justin Trudeau, right? Like, I think everybody's just ready to move on from Trudeau.
I think so too. And I think, you know, the Trudeau that we've seen the last few months is not the same Trudeau that was around, you know, 6-8 months leading up to that. So I think people are ready for that chapter to be done with. And I think just the uncertainty of what's next, you know, like he's sworn in as prime minister today, but who knows how long he's going to hold that title before an election is called. So I think the uncertainty is kind of shadowing the event of the day, honestly.
Are you ready for another election?
Honestly, I don't know. It's coming one way or another.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's going to be here sooner than we all think. So I'm gonna have to be ready.
Yeah. You have a book club party.
Yes.
This weekend. We were talking at lunch about what you're up to this weekend. Well, when we hit everything else, tariffs, Carney, that's what we were going to talk about. Right?
Yeah. No,
I don't want to throw anything else at you that you aren't aware of.
Okay.
I'm not here to trip you up. I'm really not here to trip you up. I'm not asking tough questions.
A ruse, but okay.
No. So what book? So you have a book club party.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't really call it a party.
Does it not sound like a party?
Well, yeah, okay. It has party elements.
What book were you reading?
It's called The Family Upstairs by Lisa Jewell. I'm not done it yet.
Is there a movie based on the book yet?
No, so it's not. It's not a documentary, as you referred to it earlier. No, there's no television element here. It's just a book. It's like a mystery thriller. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited. Book clubs are fun. We do potluck. Everyone brings a fun dish.
Everybody brings a fun dish. It's great weather too. St. Patrick's Day. I know you're celebrating on Monday.
Yes,
you're celebrating on the traditional
day,
holiday. Yes,
because I'm a true Irish ally.
There you go. All right, Tessa, really appreciate you stopping in. I know you got to get ready for the show. So.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Tessa Bennett, everybody. Still had Emily Tayler going to join the show. But first, I wanted to get to this. The Senate, that being the Senate in the U.S., has just hours to avoid a potential or a partial government shutdown. The Senate finding itself in a familiar position, working to avoid a partial shutdown with just hours to spare as we are on the air here. Now, Democrats have only painful options. Allow passage of a bill they believe gives President Trump vast discretion on spending decisions, or vote no and give Trump free rein. Senate Democrat leader Chuck Schumer gave members of his caucus days to vent their frustration before making it clear he will not allow a government shutdown. Emily Tayler joins the show, and I feel like we've seen a lot of each other lately.
We have. It's good to see you again, Louie.
It's great to see you too. Hosting most of the last week on Together on Morning Live, just pointing out the uniqueness of sort of being the first ones here to start the week.
Monday morning.
On Monday morning
Yep.
at 3:30 a.m. after a time change. And now being, among some of the last people to leave here to end on Friday.
It was a weird time because between Tuesday leaving 11:30 a.m. and then Wednesday coming in at noon, I don't 24 hours off. And I woke up in a panic Wednesday morning being like, it's light out. I missed my morning live shift. And then was like, no, it's fine. It's Saturday. Back to sleep. No.
There were definitely a couple of panic wake ups this week.
Yeah.
Whether it was either from a nap or in the morning.
There's nothing worse than a panic wake up from a nap when you're like, what day is it? Have I slept through the whole day?
Literally that's what it was. And I put the dark, the blackout curtains, and it was it said 4:30, and I was like, oh my God, I'm late for the morning show. And it was probably the same idea. It was probably the day of the show on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And it was just, nobody wants to hear about our sleeping habit. But that's a long way of saying daylight savings is a real problem, okay? Daylight savings, now that I've worked that shift, I'm more encouraged to say, let's just get rid of it altogether.
Scrap it. Yeah.
The couple of days you have been on Trending Now, you've been watching the G7. So obviously, interesting the way it's going down. Melanie Jolie, was she still going to be in her role at this time today? But what were the big takeaways from the G7 this week?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that people are actually watching isn't necessarily on the agenda. The agenda focuses on a lot of international issues. They're talking about, Russian oil tankers evading Western sanctions. They're talking about Russia, Ukraine, but only kind of thinly veiled because there's kind of a ceasefire going on. So they couldn't really make any big statements. Yeah. So those are all on the agenda. But I think what actually people were watching for was simply how Jolie and Rubio were going to be interacting, given, of course, tariffs and also just this threat of annexation that we've seen again and again. So Rubio very much saying, this is not my portfolio. It's not on the agenda. We're not discussing any of the stuff, the G7. Jolie, on the other hand, went into the meeting saying, I'm going to bring this up with every single person I speak with. I will be talking to them behind closed doors, even in public forums, whatever it is. Every question she's asked about it by the media involves tariffs or annexation. So it's very front and center.
So just break us through, there's G7 meetings every so often. Sometimes they're virtual, sometimes they're in person, sometimes they're with foreign secretaries, which would be this case, right?
Absolutely.
So this would be kind of the Secretary of State, Minister of Foreign Affairs. But there's bigger G7s too. So what would a bigger G7 consist of? And how is this one different?
Yeah, so this is just simply a meeting of the foreign affairs ministers. You're totally right. So Trudeau's not there. Carney's not there. It's just Melanie Jolie is representing Canada and then all of her counterparts among the G7 nations, plus a rep for the EU. In June, because Canada this year has the presidency of the entirety of the G7, so we are hosting all of this year's meetings. We're meeting in June in Alberta, June 15th to 17th. And Canada will get to set the agenda for that. So this is seen as a bit of a precursor towards that bigger meeting. Of course, every other nation has a lot of input as to what will be discussed at that big summit meeting, but that will be the ultimate. When we talk about the G7 summit, that's what's happening in June. That will be the leaders of the countries also. So theoretically, Carney, depending on what happens with an election, could be someone different. At least at this point,
that's in June.
We'll say it's Carney. Yeah. I know, it's right in that little spot of
why do these things just go back to back to back? I feel like we haven't exhaled. We've gotten we're literally halfway through March.
Yeah.
And
That's
like it
crazy.
just feels like we haven't even like processed like a new year.
I know, and now swearing in from Carney, and at least at this time of like recording this podcast, we know some sort of announcement is coming from Carney. We don't know what it is. So
Why would you make a whole cabinet and then immediately say we're running again? Or
Great question.
We haven't heard from Jugmeat yet as the time of recording, so I don't even think he was making the response. I think it was based on what Al Sweeney was watching for his reporting. It was some NDP MP from Churchill. You got a big birthday coming up. No? Did you have a big birthday coming up?
My birthday's in December.
I thought it was in March.
No.
Okay, that's just a way of getting to. It's my birthday.
It's
it was
your
my birthday. It was my birthday last week. I don't know why I thought that.
Did you think genuinely, or is that a good
I honestly thought your birthday was in March.
No, I'm December.
Oh, okay,
I'm not
never
even
mind
close.
then.
Happy birthday, Louie.
That's not what I was getting at. St. Patrick's Day, I guess, is what I was. The big celebration.
I'm Irish,
I think that's why.
but-
Maybe I put the two and two together. The
It's your
Irishness.
birthday.
It's all the same. It's all the same. But again, the week we've worked, knowing what you've
Fair.
worked, how are you decompressing this weekend to celebrate?
Well, okay, so I am having a little party this weekend, and maybe that's why I got confused.
Maybe.
It's not a birthday party. It was supposed to be a winter sucks party because I read
And then it got really beautiful.
And it got really beautiful, so now it's a welcome spring party.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
And actually, part of it is because in December, my boyfriend and I always throw a joint birthday party. His birthday's a week before mine. And then I got pneumonia. And I had pneumonia for my birthday. I had pneumonia for the party. I had pneumonia for his birthday.
You really had yourself a year.
Oh, yeah.
Well, enjoy. You're
Thank
welcome
you.
to spring. Thanks for doing this. I know you got a show to worry about, so
Absolutely.
we'll let you go.
Thank you, Louie.
All right, Emily Tayler, my thanks to her for joining me. My thanks to Tessa Bennett as well. My thanks to Manesa Dhanabalan. My thanks to Justin Peeler for directing today's episode. Hey, while you're here, make sure you subscribe to all of the Trending Now social media channels. That includes on X and on YouTube. And while you're liking and subscribing, go ahead and like CHCH Podcast. You never miss an episode of this show or any of the other great shows we have for you, including Newsmakers, where this week I sat down with the former vocalist and lead guitarist of the Canadian legendary rock band Triumph, Rick Emmett. That episode is available now wherever you found this show, or you can go to chch.com/podcast. All right, that'll do it for all of us here at CHCH. I'm Louie Butko. Have a great weekend.